Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the 8.22 support tier list video. This is going to be the last patch before the preseason. The Season 8 is going to end in about 5 days or so. I think it ends on the 12th, late at night, so this will be the last patch of this season. So let's go ahead and get in here. As usual, methodology, it's targeted primarily towards a Plat-minus audience, so it can still be relevant for Diamond people. Maybe Challenger people, but it starts to get a little bit different once you move up in ELO a bit in terms of team coordination, itemization, gold generation in games. Just the meta shifts around quite a bit. So it's primarily intended for Platinum, maybe low Diamond, and below. Obviously Bronze 5 is going to be a bit of a different type of game as well, but I'm just trying to aim for that middle of the road there. And then it's primarily intended for non-specialists with moderate practice. There are a couple of champions that do benefit quite a bit if you play them a lot. They're near the top of the list, primarily Thresh and Rakan. But I still think that they can be pretty effective with moderate practice in the current meta. And then I look also at potential power in addition to popularity and stats. Remember, stats are always backward-looking. They don't always predict the future. And there can be some very powerful things that are sort of off the grid that don't show up in statistics. I think that Nautilus right now is one of those. But we'll talk about that as we go through. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in here. With each one of these, I also have a little mini guide. If you click on it, go through. I have recommended runes, recommended items. If I have an in-depth guide for the champion, I have it listed as well. And then I have a quick scale of 1 to 5 to sort of rate how the champion compares to other support champions. So lane pressure is how likely is the champion able to exert their will on the lane. Kill threat is how likely is the champion able to get a kill in lane. Safety. How likely is the champion able to escape ganks and position well later on in team fights. How well is the champion scale over time in terms of 5. And then reliability is how likely that people can play the champion consistently at a high level, right? So part of that is the mechanical skill of the champion, but part of it is also the decision making. How difficult are the decisions and the choices you have to make in fights, and how fast you have to make those decisions. And then how well does the champion fit into the overall meta? Are there a lot of counters that are popular to this champion in the meta, or do they fit in really well with what most enemies are going to be doing? I'm going to change this on Rakan just a little bit. I'm going to move up his scaling and move down his lane pressure a little bit with this build, since we no longer do the kind of the airy build. Okay. Let's go ahead and get in here. So we'll start with Rakan. Now, I did move Rakan up a little bit here. I did have him at tier 2, or at number 2 overall. Last time I moved up to number 1. I'm not really entirely sure this is correct. I still think that Nautilus could be number 1, but one thing about Rakan that I've noticed after playing both of them quite a bit over the last couple of weeks is that he's just a bit more flexible. He can adapt to situations a little bit better than Nautilus does. Nautilus is pretty linear. You're going to get the same items most of the time on Nautilus, and you're going to have a very similar playstyle most of the time on Nautilus. It is powerful, it is effective, and he is very good against the other tank supports that are out there right now. But Rakan is more versatile. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, part of it is that he can take Unsealed Spellbook, and this is a huge boon because he can use all of the spells pretty effectively, right? He can use everything from teleport to ghost to cleanse. All of those can be really powerful on him, as well as the very popular ones like exhaust, barrier, heal. Those are probably the 3 most powerful ones that anyone can use, but he can even use the other ones. So that's really strong. Also, the fact that he has a low cooldown ult, which is one of the best initiations in the game, that allows him to start fights and really be able to make use of that summoner. Because if you just sit on the summoners, if you play Unsealed Spellbook on a champion that can't really start a fight effectively, then you might be sitting on some of those summoners for quite a while, and you might get backed up, right, to where you're not able to use the summoners fast enough to make efficient use of this rune. Rakan doesn't usually have that problem. Usually he can start a fight, force the enemy into an unfavorable situation. He can use his heal or his barrier, or he can even be a bit more risky if he has cleanse to try to bait out some of the enemy CC. So there's a lot of uses, and it really fits kind of a high, an up-tempo sort of style in League of Legends. And I think that that's what's really popular right now, what's really strong in this meta, and Unsealed Spellbook gets you to adopt that playstyle a bit more. Also, if you have a bad lane, you can even use some of this defensively. That's the thing, is you can use it up-tempo, but if you're having a bad lane, you can take teleport first, and then back, get your coin, get your potions and TP back to lane so that you can hold it while your AD carry backs, so that your team doesn't miss experience or gold. You can flank people. If your top lane's about to get dove or something, you can teleport up there and try to, deter them from diving. Or you can teleport up there for a dive yourself. There are so many different uses for this rune. It's really powerful, but it's just a lot of champions can't make great use of it. But I think Rakan is definitely one of the best users of Unsealed Spellbook right now. Footwear, fantastic bargain on Rakan. He's already pretty fast and has quite a bit of mobility, so you don't have to have your boots immediately early on, because he can dodge skill shots just fine with his E and his W. He can evade ganks really easily, so you don't have to buy boots on your first back, unlike some other champions that are slow and have huge hitboxes and things like that. So I think he's a really good footwear user, and usually when this comes online, it's probably gonna be on your second back, and you're going to have just enough gold to grab some Ionian boots and really start going to work with that CDR. CDR is exceptionally strong on him because he has very powerful abilities. I'd say at least 3 of his 4 abilities are all very high impact. I mean, his Q is okay. It's okay in the laning phase. It's not really that great outside the laning phase. But his W, his shield, and his ult are all extremely powerful. And so the CDR is very handy there. You get Biscuits, helps you through a tough lane, and Cosmic Insight is fantastic on him as well. It gives you the CDR, gives you the Summoner cooldown. Once again, Summoners are very good on him, so that's helpful. And then just Bone Plating and Chrysalis, you can still get those. They are taking away Bone Plating next patch, but for now, this just gives you some really good power in the early game. So that's what I recommend on Rakan. I think that there is an argument to be made for Guardian, if you want to go that right now. The problem is Revitalize is not amazing with most of what he builds. Typically he goes Zeke's first. Back in the day when he would go something like Redemption and Ardent Censor, then Revitalize would be a lot stronger, but it doesn't do anything if you rush Zeke's. But it can be helpful if you think you might get something like a Redemption later on. It can be useful. I mean, it does boost up your shield, but it's going to make you a bit squishier early on. So that is something that could be helpful. You're obviously going to get Bone Plating and Cosmic Insight, or Bone Plating and Chrysalis, regardless of the way that you build it. So that doesn't matter. So it just comes down to, do you want Guardian and Revitalize more, or would you rather have Unsealed Spellbook and probably Biscuits more? I would probably go with Unsealed and Biscuits, but there's definitely an argument for Guardian. Some people still go Airy on Rakan. I don't like this after the Airy nerfs. It is pretty good, that you can provide that extra shield on people, but everything else, I mean, I guess Nimbus Cloak is pretty good on him. You do get that extra movement speed, which is nice. Absolute Focus is it's okay. He does scale really well with AP. Gathering Storm is okay later on. Scorch, you're not going to harass enough to really use Scorch effectively. Water Walking is interesting for roaming. I mean, the Sorcery Tree has some okay stuff in it, but I would still I think most people are going Guardian, but I still think that Unsealed is worth considering. So it's not like Ares terrible. I just think you're going to be a bit squishier with that build, and you're going to have a bit less utility, but overall it can be decent. And as far as the build goes, there are a lot of different items you can go on Rakan. You'll have to watch my video or guides to kind of see what to do in different situations. You pretty much always want Nomads and Zekes, and if you can get away with it, Ionians are very, very strong on him. If they have a lot of CC, you might have to get something like Mercury Treads, or if they have a lot of AD Assassins, maybe Ninja Tabby. But overall, this is a really good early game combination you can get when you get Glacial Shroud plus Ionian plus Nomad and Cosmic Insight. You'll have 35% CDR, usually fairly early in the game, and that's so good for starting fights with your ult. So really, really nice itemization. Knight's Vow is something you can get if they have a lot of assassins. The Kindle Gem is very helpful. You can also go Shirelias with the Kindle Gem if you have a bunch of bruisers that you want to speed onto their backline. That can be nice. Redemption can be pretty good if you're having a lot of team fights. You just want to get that heal in there. You can go something like Locket. I don't think Locket's phenomenal on him. It doesn't have CDR on it, and he doesn't have any, or not a significant amount of plus health on these items. And so the shield's going to be relatively weak. As a final item, you could go something like a ZZ Rock Portal. I don't think that's phenomenal right now, but I guess it's on the table. But yeah, usually it's just Nomads, Ionians, Zeeks, complete this to the tier 3 to get your 4 ward item, buy a bunch of control wards, and that's typically it. But like I said, Shirelias and Knight's Vow are probably the next common ones. Oh, and Ardent Censor. I forgot about Censor. So Censor is another one that I've been building more lately. They can be really good if your AD carries ahead. It synergizes extremely well with Zeeks because you get the extra attack speed and on hit, and then Zeeks benefits from that attack speed because you're getting to hit them more and triggering the Zeeks. So that's a pretty good combination. I don't know if I'd rush Ardent first. In most circumstances, maybe. He is really, really good with it because he likes the movement speed. He likes the AP. He likes everything about it. It just doesn't have any defensive stats on it. So that's the core issue there. Whereas Zeke's also boosts your AD carry, and it has pretty decent defensive stats. So lots of different options, but that's what I love about him. He can start fights. He scales pretty well with his shields. He has a wide variety of items and different playstyles he can adopt, and he can play around not just your AD carry. He is one of the best at playing around your AD carry because he has Zeeks plus Ardent Censor if your AD carry is really far ahead. But he can play around other people too. He can play around a Bruiser. If you have a really fed Irelia or something like that, you can get Shirelias on him, play around her, start a fight, boost her in to go run everybody down. You can play around really good team fights. So if you have something like a Misfortune and a Moo, and you want to play the team fight game, you can get a redemption early on to make sure that your team is gonna win the fight cleanly. So there are a ton of different options that you can get with him, and he doesn't just have to play around AD carry. So if your AD carry feeds, you can go roam mid, play around them, play around the jungler. One thing that's really underappreciated about Rakan is he's probably the best warder in the game because he has so many escapes and he can jump over the walls so often that you can get deep in their jungle and get those wards in. And it's extremely rare for people, if you're doing it properly, for people to be able to catch you and run you down. So you have so many different ways to get away. You can W over a wall, you can E to an ally, you can ult and tag somebody and run away, like light speed, if you have to. There's a lot of different ways you can get really deep vision. So that's another thing that's huge benefit of Rakan. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So Rakan's awesome. He is squishy though, so if you're inexperienced with him or if they have a lot of CC on their team and they just catch you out, that can be a problem. You can take Cleanse on him instead of Ignite in some matchups. If you're against something like a Fiddlesticks or a Morgana or just something else that's going to have like a really obnoxious bind, then you can take Cleanse. You can also get a Quicksilver Sash early if you need to. So there are a lot of different options with him. So yeah, I think Rakan's probably number one. But also up there is going to be Nautilus. Now, Nautilus is someone that I talked a lot about in the 821 tier list. That tier list was a little late, though. So a lot of people may not have heard it, and I still get asked about this on stream a lot. So what's up with Nautilus? Why is he good? Well, a lot of his competition has been nerfed out. So particularly things like Braum and Tom have been nerfed, so they aren't getting played as much, and they're pretty good against him, kind of the peeler, anti-engage champs. There also are very few tanks that are being played in any position outside of support. It's pretty much carry in every other lane. If we look at everybody here, kind of these top-rated things off of Lololytics, and most of them have really good play rates. Very, very few tanks, if any. I mean, the things that are tanky are like these bruiser type of champs that take a while to ramp up, right? So things like Jax, things like Irelia. But everything else, is pretty much not going to be a tank top lane. You have Sion, who still sees some play. I don't really think Sion's that great right now, but he's like one of the tanks that occasionally still gets picked top lane. Urgot, he can get pretty tanky at some points. He's banned a lot, but Urgot can kind of serve that tank role. But yeah, he doesn't have a great initiate. So yeah, a lot of the like heavy initiation tanks just are not getting played anymore. So I'm thinking of things like Sejuani, things like Ornn, even stuff like Shen, Nautilus, Malphite, top lane. Gragas is getting played in the jungle summon. He is pretty tanky. Mundo, Cho'Gath. A lot of these champs just aren't seeing play. Everybody's playing carries in pretty much every role. We are seeing I've seen some more of Moo lately, but by and large, it's carries in every role. So having a hard engaged support with a lot of CC that can be that tanky front line is very, very handy. And Nautilus does that better than almost anybody. So what I like to compare him to the most is Thresh, because a lot of tier lists will have Thresh as number 1 right now, and Thresh is very good. I have him at number 3. But there's a couple of things that I like about Nautilus over Thresh. They're both similar. Hook, heavy CC, pretty tanky champs. First of all, Nautilus is going to be tankier for a lot of the game. He has a repeatable shield. They lowered the cooldown on the shield by quite a lot, by 6 seconds. Used to be an 18-second shield. They did lower the efficacy of the shield, so how strong it is, but it's on a much lower cooldown, so that's really helpful. But then just his base stats are a lot higher than Thresh's. He has 576 health. The big one is the armor. He starts at 36 armor and gets scaling armor up to 99. Whereas Thresh only gets, I think he starts with like 29 or 28 flat armor and doesn't get any per level. He only gets it per soul. So if you're doing really well and grabbing a ton of souls, you might be able to keep up with someone like Nautilus or Braum or Alistar or some of these other tanks. But by and large, Thresh is going to be deceptively really squishy early on. So yeah, Nautilus has that. He also has scaling magic resist, which is another thing that Thresh doesn't have as much of. Thresh gets like that little half magic resist. It goes up to like 39 or something rather than 53. So Nautilus is going to be a lot tankier than Thresh. Nautilus also, I think, is just a lot more consistent than Thresh is. The hitbox on this hook is absurd. It's so large. You can hit like almost anybody with this thing. Like, it's so hard to juke. So it has a massive hitbox, and it also is basically instant cast. Thresh has a half a second delay on it. Pyke has like a half a second charge time. This is very, very quick. It's like a blitzcrank hook, but I think it has an even bigger hitbox. It's really, really good. It also has a little knockup, which is helpful if you have something like a Yasuo can ult off of that. So nice little knockup, brings you into melee range with them. You can also use this to escape. So yes, you can't hook people over walls, but if you've been watching my stream lately, you can make some pretty good escapes with this dredge line. If you can get a clear path to like a wall or something, that's almost like an 1100 flash that you have that's on a pretty low cooldown because you get half of it refunded. So if you end up, with like 25% CDR and you only have 1 point in this and you get half of it refunded, I think it checks the CDR first, so it'd go down to like, 11 seconds or something like that. You get half back. It's only 5.5 seconds or so. So you can just hook your way around the map, and it's basically free. You get half the mana cost back, so it only costs 30 mana. So you can just like zip around the map with this. So that makes him pretty mobile. Now, he can't get over walls, obviously, but open field, he could move around quite a bit. His auto attack applies a root, so it's kind of almost like a Braum passive, but it can just be him auto attacking. So it doesn't stun for as long as Braum, and it doesn't do as much damage, but it is something that you can just trigger by yourself on a bunch of different people. And he has really good wave clear. Now, this costs a lot of mana, so you can't do this all the time, but, if you get a kill or you're trying to prepare for Dragon or something like that, he can use his Riptide and wave clear really quickly, and then move to the rest of the fight. And this does quite a bit of damage. If you hit people with all the waves, if they're pretty close to you, then this can do up to 350 damage, so that's pretty sweet. And then Depth Charge, they reduced the cooldown on this. And this is an amazing ult. I think this is honestly one of the most underappreciated ults in the game. It's 825 range, which is huge. And then it's just a point click, and that person's going to get hit hard and knocked up. So, at rank 11 is 325 damage. And it also knocks them up for 1 second and stuns them for 1.5. That's 2.5 seconds of CC. And anyone that's in the way that it knocks up, so if you knock up like 3 people, you can put this on the back line 80 carry, because it outranges 80 carry's auto attack range. You can just point click, put this on the back line. It's going to knock up all their frontliners, do half damage roughly, and then it's going to stun them for 1 second plus the additional. So it's going to stun all of them for 2.5 seconds too. So it's just a ridiculous stun length. It's point click. You can't miss it. It's not a skill shot. If they have like a Zhonya's Hourglass or some other thing to make them untargetable, like maybe a Fizz ult or like a Fizz E or like a Master E Alpha Strike, like there are some cases where it can be frustrating because it is a pretty slow moving projectile. But vast majority of champions it's gonna hit them, it's gonna stun them, and it's gonna stun other people and do really good damage. So this is one of the solutions to the super high mobility running around. You know, the Kaisa or the Vayne or the Lucian who's like dashing around everywhere, really hard to hit skill shots against you know, higher tier players. Point click boom, you're getting hit most of the time. So really, really strong champion right now. I think he's the best of the tank engaged champs. I think he's also, like I said, one of the most consistent. You don't have to have 1,000 games on him to be proficient. You can just pick him up, and he just has a lot of really forgiving mechanics with the escape off of the hook. Really easy to hit the hook, a repeatable shield, and a point-click ultimate that can't miss. Very, very reliable. So I think he's super strong right now. I'm actually going to change him around a little bit. We'll move that up. Scaling is fairly low. I'm going to move the reliability up. And I'll move the pressure up a little bit too. I think that you can get quite a few kills. He does a shocking amount of damage early game, especially if you have an aggressive AD carry. Okay, Thresh. So most people are going to say Thresh is number 1 right now. I have him at number 3. Part of that is because he's very difficult to optimize to play correctly. Thresh is the hardest support to play in the game. Several reasons for that. Number 1, he has a very slender hitbox on his hook. It does have a good range, and it has a half a second delay. So a lot of people are going to know they're going to play against Thresh a lot. He's one of those popular supports. They're going to be very familiar with his animations, and they're probably going to dodge a lot of your hooks unless you are a master at weaving it through traffic, or you get really good vision control and can hit people out of bushes with it, or they're distracted or CC'd by something else. It's pretty easy to dodge this. Now, they did lower the cooldown on this quite a bit. It used to be 20 seconds at level 1, so this is really nice in the early game. If you miss your hook, it'll be up a lot sooner. And as far as Dark Passage goes, this just recently got a buff too, which is pretty nice. They lowered the cooldown on this by quite a bit. I think it's 12 at max rank. And it gives a nice shield. I mean, in the mid game, you're probably going to have like maybe 60 souls, 60 to 80 souls. So this is going to be, 280 to 300 shield that's on a 12-second cooldown, which with CDR can be much less. And it gives basically like a free, escape to people. So really, really handy ability. And you can use this offensively too. If you drag in the jungler, then you're going to have the shield. The jungler's going to have the shield when he comes in off the W. So you can use it offensively and you can use it defensively, which is a common theme with Thresh. The same is true of Flay. You can use that to knock people back that are trying to dive on your AD carry. You have to be really quick with it to make it work efficiently. You have to have really fast reflexes to stop a lot of the movement abilities. And you have to know what you're looking for and anticipate it. But you can Flay a Camille trying to jump on your AD carry. You can Flay Jarvan, trying to do his flag and drag combo. You can Flay Zac trying to engage. You can Flay Alistar, Leona, Rakan. There's a ton of engaged champs you can just knock back, but you have to be really fast to use it efficiently. And then of course you can use it offensively too. If you Flay the enemy towards you, it'll slow them for a little bit, and then that'll make it much more likely you're going to hit your hook, where you're otherwise going to be able to engage the champ. So good mix of offense and defense. Ultimate, fairly long cooldown, not super impressive. It's okay. It does have a delay on it, like a 0.75 delay. So if they're not hooked or slowed, a lot of times they're able to get out of it because there is so much mobility before it goes up. It does decent damage. It's a shadow of its former self years ago. It used to come up instantly. But that's the same with a lot of Thresh's ability. He's been nerfed a lot over time. So he's okay. I mean, he's a good mix, right? He's engaged, but he has really good defense as well. If you miss your hook, you still have your Flay, you still have your Lantern. He can get people out of a lot of really tough situations, and he can start fights and close them out pretty quickly. So, very strong champ. His itemization is not that great. This is another thing that sort of holds him back a little bit from someone like Nautilus. Nautilus uses Zeke's better than he does because Nautilus's ult is on a longer cooldown, and it's much more likely to be able to hold people still for longer because people can get out of the Thresh ult that I just mentioned. But Nautilus, they're going to be knocked up, and then he's going to hit him with the hook, his auto attack. There's going to be a lot more CC chain involved in that. So Thresh can still use Zeke's. It's okay. Knight's Vow, Thresh is considered a ranged champion, and so he's only going to get half the benefit of that. It's only going to be 6% damage transference and 6% healing, versus Nautilus is going to be 12%, 12%. And those are two of the best items that you can get for most of the engaged champs. So his itemization is a bit weaker. His runing is also a little bit weaker. I mean, Guardian is pretty good on him. Some people go Aftershock as well. I think both of those can be viable. So he's good. I mean, if you're a Grandmaster Thresh player, he probably is number one. But I just think that Nautilus is going to be a lot more consistent with his point-click ability on his ult and the bigger hitbox on his hook and his ability to escape with his hook. So just don't get baited, into fights. Don't try to go and save people that are going to die. That's the same way with a lot of these engaged champs, except for Rakan. With Rakan, usually you can get out even if you try to go save them. But with most other champs, if you go in there, you're probably going to die if you take the wrong hook. Okay. Alistar is another one that gets talked about a lot as being a high-tier support, and I think he is pretty good. The problem is I think he's way better in pro play where there's organized dives and highly coordinated engages so that, you're not going to waste his potential. Because he does have one of the best engages in the game, right? He's got his headbutt pulverize combo, his WQ. Now, the thing about this is it's only a 1 second knockup, though. Right? Whereas Rakan's is going to be about a second and a half because his it is a 1 second knockup for Rakan, too. But they're going to be charmed for that extra little half a second before Rakan goes up. Versus Alistar's is instant. So this is like two abilities that are very similar to creating a Rakan ult. For the most part. So it's like on demand, it's a lot faster. He does have a heal in lane, so if he can just stand there and stuff dies around him, he can heal himself and his ally. Which is something that sets him apart from a lot of other tanks. Trample, you can get that extra stun in there. And Unbreakable pretty much makes him unkillable. And that's why he's so good in pro play, because when he's level 6, he can start a fight, with confidence that he's not going to die in the fight most of the time. Or he can dive towers. Whereas in solo queue, diving the towers can be really sketchy, even if people are standing there, because people just won't fully commit. They'll be scared, they won't know how to juggle tower aggro. So it's just a lot dicier. But, he is pretty good against a lot of these other champs. Thresh, you're not going to be hooking to Alistar. If you Blitz hook or Thresh hook or Nautilus hook the Alistar, there's a good chance he's just going to ult and go onto your AD carry on the back line. So he is very resistant to other engaged champions. He has pretty good peel himself if he needs to. He can use that headbutt to knock away the Kha'Zix, is trying to jump on your AD carry, or to knock away the Rengar, trying to jump on your AD carry. So he does have pretty good peel. He has pretty good engage. Definitely deserves to be tier 1. You could play him instead of Rakan if you want something that's like a tankier version with less mobility and less scaling. I think you could make an argument for any of these being number 1 right now. Some of it comes down to experience or personal preference or team comps. Like, it's really tough to say definitively which one of these is going to be the best most of the time. But I think they're all valuable and they're all powerful in their own right. So I think that these 4 are definitely a step up above anything that's lower in most situations. But they all have their benefits. And, they're all going to build, or at least these 3 are going to build similar items. It's just going to be Zeke's. Now, Zeke's isn't as good on Alistar because you're going to have to blow your ult, to trigger the Zeke's. But when you're starting a fight, you're probably going to blow your ult anyways. It's on a pretty short cooldown, so not a huge consideration, but sometimes you might hold your ult just a little bit longer, and that's less time for your AD carry to start pounding on the enemy with the Zeke's. So not quite as good with Zeke's as, Thresh, Nautilus, or Rakan. They're still pretty good, and then they're all going to be getting Knight's Vow for the most part, except Rakan, optional, depending on the situation. Okay, Pyke is another one that I moved up a little bit here just because he is getting changed around a little bit. And I had thought that the change was going to be terrible, but after looking at some of these numbers, it could potentially be really strong. The main thing is the AD scaling on the ult now. He gets 8 health per 100 bonus attack damage. So if you just have, 20 off of your runes, and then you just get something like Dustblade or whatever, then you can pretty easily get kind of close to 100. And the way this reads, it's 8 health per 1 bonus attack damage. So if you get to just one item, just either Ghost Blade or Dust Blade or whatever, plus just your normal AD, like you're going to be getting close to 800 healing off your passive. Now, it can only be up to 60% of your max health, but that's more than the 50% that it used to be. So I feel like this is pretty disgusting. I mean, even with 50 AD, which is pretty easy to get, that's just like pieces of items before you even complete your full item. That's still going to be 480 health, which is probably going to be like close to half your health bar. So that's pretty insane. You know, I thought they were going to nerf his passive a lot more, which is why the tank build would fall off. But yeah, even with just something like Dust Blade, you're still going to have a lot of sustain. Now, if you don't have the armor, then your health is not going to be, you're not going to have as much effective health, but it's still going to be really strong. So that's an interesting change. Ghost Water, it's cheaper, which is helpful. Mana is not really an issue a lot of times, Pyke, but if you don't get Frozen Heart, then it perhaps could be. So they are lowering that, which is nice. This tends to be the last thing that you max, so 40% early, but if you get 20 lethality off of an item, that's going to be 30 extra movement speed, because 1.5% per lethality, so that'll be 70% move speed, which is actually an upgrade. So once you complete your lethality item, so it's going to be less, you know, until like maybe level 9 or so, but then after you get your a full item, then it's going to be really good, like you have 3 ranks in it. So I think overall that's probably a buff. Although the skill doesn't matter like that much, whether it's 40% or 60%. It could early on. But neutral, I would say. Phantom Undertow, they're lowering the mana cost on this. That's helpful. Then the stun duration is 1.1. This is the second thing that you max, typically. So this will not be maxed until level 13. And then 0.1 per 10 lethality. So this is a nerf, because your first item is going to give you 20 lethality. That's only going to be 1.3. So I think it's a stun duration nerf off of double lethality. You know, if you go 40 lethality, then it's the same. So I guess it's probably about the same. At single item, it's the equivalent of previously having, you know, 1.3, the third point in this, and at 2 lethality items, it's the same as having this maxed. I don't know. Maybe a slight nerf to neutral. And then 1.5 per 1 point in lethality. That's pretty good. I thought they were taking away the AD scaling on this, but I think they're keeping the AD scaling. And it's getting additional lethality scaling. So it has a base damage, which was buffed quite a lot. If you remember that, it went from 200 to 250 a couple of patches ago. And it has an AD ratio, which I think is, I mean, I can just click on it here real quickly. I think the AD ratio is like 0.6. .8. It's actually increased it. So a 0.8 AD ratio and 1.5 lethality, which is pretty crazy. So like at level 9, it's 525 execute. And then if you have Ghost Blade or something, I think has 60 AD on it, a 0.8 off of that. It's probably like 50, maybe 55. We'll go with, I think 55 is pretty close. 55, and then an extra 30, so that'd be 85. So that'd be a 610 execute. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. That has a lot of scaling now. So they really want you to get these lethality items. And don't forget that they did recently just buff Edge of Night. So this item had been thought to be pretty garbage, but don't forget, this was a very abusive item. When it first came out, this item was really, really strong. It used to be, I think it was a 30-second cooldown, and it used to last for a while. And recently, they just buffed it back, I'm pretty sure. So now it channels for 1 second instead of 1.5, which is a very big deal. Comes online a lot faster. They lowered the cost by 200, so now it's already gold efficient, even without the passive, which is really nice. 100. So they lowered it by 100. They reduced the channel duration. Trying to say. Okay, only one ability that hits. Okay, so they removed the combat movement speed. Lethality now gives... Okay, it doesn't give magic resist, it gives health. Either way, I think it's pretty good. Because that will help protect you from getting CC'd, like getting Thresh hooked or getting Blitz hooked or whatever. You know, you can just pop Edge of Night, go invisible, just run in, you know, get your E off, and then I still don't know if you want to start fights with this kind of squishy build, but that is something potentially that could be helpful. Now, people pointed out you can still go Frozen Heart on him. You're not losing that much. You're losing some of the scaling off of your passive, which is a big deal. But like your other abilities, you're not losing that much. You're just losing some of the potential that you're not going to have off of the new scaling. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. Like, he might still be too squishy if he goes like Duskblade, Ghostblade. Duskblade is particularly good because every time you blink, I'm pretty sure you go invisible. So, you know, you can execute somebody, then walk over, attack somebody else, get that Duskblade proc, and then ult again. So I don't think it has an internal cooldown on it. As long as you keep going invisible, I think it keeps working. I can't remember. They've changed this item several times. Oh, you have to be unseen for 1 second. Okay, never mind. Doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. But you can reset it whenever your Ghost Water dive comes off cooldown and you go through again. So, anyways, I think he can be pretty good. So obviously he has the hook, he has the engage, he has the CC with this Phantom Undertow, and he gets a lot of extra gold for your team. So that's a lot of utility. You can reset, get those kills, get the utility. So they gave him a lot of extra scaling. They're really trying to get him to go lethality. So we'll see. I don't think he's going to be like super busted and overpowerful. Although I don't know, like that healing is pretty sick. Like with the AD scaling off of that. So we'll revisit this. I think he's tier 1, but I hesitate to put him above the other few people right now. And then I need to change this. I think now that you go back to Targon. Because now he scales with AD, and that gives him AD. So probably Targon. And I don't know, you do get quite a bit of extra value out of Edge and out of lethality. So maybe Edge of Night is what you go. This does give you extra AD as well. I'm not sure the exact conversion rate there. It's probably like 8. It's like 7.5 extra AD or something. Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. So yeah, good. And then I think you'll still go the Aftershock Bone Plating Chrysalis Revitalize build with Timing and Cosmic Insight. I think that's all still going to be the same. So you will have Aftershock to help you out a little bit whenever you engage, but going to be a strong champ. Okay, hey, thanks for the sub, T-Grims. I appreciate it. Alright, moving down to tier 2 here. I do think that Nami is still pretty good. I think she's the best enchanter if you really want to go that way. You know, she's still going to have a hard time with a lot of these champs. Anything that can hard engage on her and start a fight is going to be rough. However, she is still very, very oppressive in the early game. So if you pair her with something like a Jhin, Draven, Misfortune, Lucian, very good with Lucian. Lucian's double shot procs 2 of her Tidecaller Blessing hits, so that can be quite a lot of damage. You know, early on, that's like 50 extra damage whenever he does his double attack. So I think that can be pretty helpful. And then she does have, like, once she gets to 6, she has decent, you know, disengage with Tidal Wave on a fairly short cooldown. Still has excellent harassment. Still has pretty good itemization. You know, she's a good Ardent Sensor user. She can even use Zeeks. I've talked about this in the past. You wouldn't want to get that all the time, but if they have a fed assassin, you know, they got that 5-0 Zed or Talon or something in the mid lane, you can optimize or itemize into Zeeks if you want to. It will give you the 60 AD. And I say that, like, it's an option on her just because she doesn't have, like, super amazing scaling with plus healing and shielding. It's okay, you know, off of her wave. But you're not missing out on as much by not getting redemption as you would on someone like a Soraka or a Sona. So, you know, And you can slow them down with your ult, so this wave slows them a ton, and you have more slows with your Tidecaller's Blessing. So you can hold them still, you know, so that your AD carry can pound them with the Zeke's proc. So that's different from someone like Soraka, who can't really hold people still, or like Janna, who has a harder time holding people still. Nami's potentially going to be a lot more efficient at that, so... she can get things like Zeke's if she has to, although it's weird, but she can just still go, you know... Ardent Censer, Redemption, Mikhail's, just your standard Enchanter builds if you want to, and that can work well. So, very good, very strong, oppressive laner, particularly if you pair her with another aggressive laner. They did nerf like her ability to heal weak lanes like Vayne. That was where they hit her most, is with the healing. So she doesn't, if you're just healing one person and not doing anything else, it doesn't heal for as much as it used to, which can be a little rough. But she needed to be toned down a little bit. But she still has a pretty high win rate, I think, and people are still using her to good effect. So, I think she's the best enchanter right now. I know that Sona has a better win rate, but I just think Nami's a little more versatile, and she's a little stronger with some of the really popular ADs that are out there. So... I would probably pick Nami if you really want to play an enchanter who can have a lot of harassment early and then still has some good strength moving into the mid and the late game. Alright, Lulu's another one that I have on here. Lulu's kind of an odd duck as well. I think that she can be very strong in the right circumstances, but she doesn't really have an engage. That's kind of the same thing with Nami. So if your team is just like all squishy champions, you don't have a tank, you don't have an engage, it can be rough. Now, Lulu can ult somebody, you know, to kind of turn them into like a semi-tank. The problem with Lulu is like her Q is pretty weak right now. You don't get a lot of points in it. It's not a very good one-hit wonder. And her shield is also on the weaker side because it breaks in 2.5 seconds. And it's just not very AP efficient. So she doesn't have good AP scaling. She doesn't scale well with plus healing and shielding. But she is very good with Ardent Censer because your W gives them a lot of extra attack speed. And that allows you to get more on-hit hits with the Ardent Censer. And then the attack speed off of Ardent Censer also allows you to proc her picks a lot more when you put that on somebody. So her W is awesome. It's overloaded. You know, it gives a lot of attack speed, a lot of move speed, or it is a, you know, like a 2.25 second polymorph. But the problem is you have to choose, right? You can't do both. And so that's the thing. Is like two of her abilities are not that great, which is her Q and her E. Her W is amazing, but you can only use one mode at a time, and then her ult is also really strong. So, I think if you want to play Lulu, I would pair her with someone like a Twitch or a Kai'Sa, or just someone else who's going to scale like super hard. And just try to protect him. Like, she is very good at protecting AD carries against assassins for an enchanter. She's probably the best enchanter at doing that. Because the ult, you know, gives this huge infusion of health. It works around Ignite, because it's an infusion of health and not a heal. So it works around Ignite, it works around like Executioner's Calling or anything like that they might have, Morellonomicon. And it knocks him up, which can delay him for a little bit, and you can polymorph the assassin. So I think that she has a lot of good stuff going for her. So great with Ardent Censer. She can get Zeke's pretty comfortably as well, because she has a low cooldown ult that holds people still, because whenever you ult somebody, they're going to be slowed also by the ultimate. So I think that she's undercover potentially pretty strong. Fiddlesticks is probably my favorite AP champ still right now, just because he has the point click 2.25 second stun, he has good wave clear, and he has good initiation. He's the only like mainstream AP champ that can be played as support that has initiation. So that's really why I like him a lot. You have to have good vision control. But if you know, pop out of the jungle at people and they don't see you and you get that fear off, they don't have Quicksilver Sash, and any allies around, you're probably going to win the fight. The problem is if you're losing as Fiddlesticks, they have wards all over your jungle, or if they have people that are really tanky or resilient to damage, then it can be pretty tough, you know, for him, because that's pretty much all he does, you know, late game. So... like, his drain is really not that useful most of the time. Usually you have to hourglass and run away or you're going to die. Like, there are some circumstances, like in smaller fights, where that drain can be really strong. But, like, in most team fights, in a lot of situations, you're not going to be using the drain a ton. You're just going to be ulting in, fearing somebody, trying to press your E if you have time, hourglass, hope you're not dead by then, or chain CC'd. and then try to like get out of there if you can and wait on your cooldowns to reset. So he's okay, but he is very squishy. He is very susceptible to all-ins if they get a hold of you before you can fear him. So he's very susceptible to ganks as well. But he does have that push. So I like Fiddlesticks if your team has a ton of AD and you need an AP threat on your team, and particularly you need CC and Engage. So a lot of people aren't picking CC or Engage either. They're just picking really high damage champs. Then he could potentially be a good pick for you. Zyra is the lane dominant AP carry that I prefer. You could also substitute in here Brand if you prefer Brand. I like Zyra more because she has better lane control with the plants. She has better vision control with the plants. I just think she offers a lot more consistent harass because she can cast all of her spells through the minion wave, her E, her Q, and her R, whereas Brand has to have a clear shot with his fireball. So if you're winning the lane, if you're able to push him in and harass him under the tower, Brand's probably better at that. But if you're in kind of a neutral lane, if you're keeping it in the middle, Zyra is probably going to be a bit better at that because the plants are going to die under the tower, but they can zone people off if you're in a neutral mid lane. So they can both be good. Now, Brand is probably stronger if they have a lot of melee. So if they have like 3 or 4 melee champs and they're all going to be grouped up trying to team fight, Brand potentially can be stronger because everyone's going to be clumped up for his ultimate. But I think Zyra is probably better because she can delete people faster in the game off of less items if you can catch people out of a bush with your ult. They're both very strong. They're both very similar. It just comes down to, do you want to have more uptime on your abilities? Brand does have a lower cooldown on his abilities, whereas Zyra is waiting for plants usually. Or do you want to have more vision control and more consistent lane domination? So, both of them are really good AP options, though. And then Braum I put over here in the tier 2 primarily because Lucian's so ridiculously powerful right now, and Braum is so good with Lucian because those double shots proc additional ticks of the Braum passive. So you can stack that passive up and get that stun really quickly. And just being able to shield your AD carry is very good against, a lot of the stuff that's going on out there. He's one of the best. He probably is the best peeler tank right now. One problem is that they have Assassin Zone. You need that stun immediately. Sometimes it can be tough, like if the Zed ults your AD carry, or like an Akali's on your AD carry, or an Irelia or something like that. It's hard to peel melee champions with Braum, but he is very good against other ranged champions. But he's just particularly impressive and strong in the early game, and he's very, very good in team fights, especially if you have a lot of auto-attacking champs. So if you have like a Lucian and a Kindred, or Lucian and a Master Yi, or something like that, then you have a lot of stuff going for you. But he has a hard time engaging, so if they have the superior AD carry, if you're rocking Ezreal or something and they're rocking like Twitch, it's going to be really hard to win that game later on. Like, you can block a lot of Twitch's projectiles with a shield. Like, maybe Kai'Sa would be a better example. You can't really stop them from scaling as Braum. You're just kind of hoping that your team is scaling better. So, I mean, like, you can flash ult and, try that and see if that works, but primarily he's a pure defensive support, and so you're hoping that your team outscales or outperforms their team. You're not really trying to make plays or engage, which I think is kind of sketchy in a meta that's largely predicated on super snowbally, heavy damage champions constantly skirmishing and just running around Clown Fiesta the map, picking people off. And there are some team fights, but I think a lot of the games are determined by like who gets a pick on the other team right now, who picks off that one person who's somewhere they shouldn't be. And Braum can't punish mispositioning as much as some of these other champs can. Okay, going down to tier 3, I have Blitzcrank. Blitz could easily be in tier 2, maybe even tier 1 if you're really good on Blitz. I just think he doesn't have as much utility as some of these higher engaged champs. So we have like 5, pretty hard engaged champs. And I just feel like he is lower than that. He has huge mana cost early. If you miss a couple of hooks, you're out of mana in the laning phase. You're also very vulnerable. If you miss that hook, they know it's going to be down for like 20 seconds. And they can just come up and just beat up your AD carry and just zone him off the wave. So he's super high risk, medium reward. If you land the hook, you're probably going to kill him. But a lot of these champs are not necessarily you're going to kill him right away, right? Like Rakan can probably still dash away even if you hook him. If somehow you magically hook him, because he can dodge so many things if he's paying attention with his W. Nautilus might just be able to fight you if you hook him, right? He just turns on his shield, ults the AD carry, and just goes to work. Thresh, similar. Usually Thresh is pretty squishy, so if you hook Thresh, maybe you can do some stuff. But he can lantern people in, flay, ult. He has some resistance. Alistar's a nightmare. You don't want to hook him most of the time, because he's just going to be resistant to most of your damage. That's just going to put him closer to your AD carry. And then Pyke, can probably dash away with all of his dashes too. So I just think that Blitzcrank doesn't line up very well against a lot of the popular supports right now, and pretty much all he is a hook. His movement speed thing is okay. It's pretty anemic in an actual fight, though. His knockup is pretty anemic. It's okay. So he's pretty much all in on the hook and burst. So he's all right. I mean, can you win with him? Sure. I just think that these other things are going to do what he's trying to do better, and they're going to be a bit more versatile. But you can certainly win with Blitzcrank. Leona's kind of similar, although I was kind of I wanted to sort of put her in tier 2. Once again, I just feel like these champs do what she's trying to do better. But if you have a very aggressive lane, Leona can engage through the minion wave, which is really nice. A lot of these other champs can't do that outside of Rakan. Well, I guess Nautilus can, but if he presses R, Alistar can. Never mind, most of them can. But Thresh has a hard time engaging through a minion wave. Pyke can have a hard time engaging through a minion wave with his hook. So Leona can always do that. She has a low cooldown ult, and she does quite a bit of damage with her sunlight procs early on. So if you're ahead in the lane, then Leona is a nightmare. You pair Leona with someone like Alistar, and you get, not Alistar, not a Leona Alistar lane, but Leona with something like Draven. That can be very scary, right? You can get a ton of kills and just snowball the game out of control. She can dive pretty well. She gets a lot of extra armor off of Aftershock and off of her W. But like I said, kind of like with Blitzcrank, she has bad matchups into some of these other champs. Particularly Thresh. Thresh completely destroys Leona. Because whenever she tries to go in with her E, he has a lot of time to flay her back. He has all day, if he's standing anywhere close, to be able to flay back. So that's a nightmare. And then if he flays you back and hooks you, then the AD carry is just going to beat you up because you have no mobility. You have no way to escape. You've just used your E, so you can't engage on them reliably. It's just really, really bad if he ends up flaying you. And that's going to happen to you a lot. Alistar, similarly, very tough matchup. Alistar can headbutt back your engage, or if you go in on the AD carry, he can headbutt back the enemy AD carry to pull them really far out of position, and then he can walk back and Q you. And, their AD carry, the Alistar's AD carry, is going to be doing a lot more damage because they're going to get to sit there and just pound the Leona, whereas Alistar has displaced the Leona AD carry, so they're not going to be able to do as much. So it's a really tough matchup also into that. Pyke is an okay matchup, manageable perhaps. Leona is very, very good into Rakan, so if you have her as a counter pick, she can be good into Rakan. So I wouldn't pick Leona blind first pick, but into certain matchups, I think she can be good. So that's why I have kind of good into certain situations, right? So good into Rakan, good into Nami, pretty good into things like Fiddlesticks and Zyra, if you have an aggressive AD carry, but pretty bad into Thresh, not great into Alistar, pretty rough into Nautilus as well. That's kind of a skill matchup. But either way, she's okay in the right circumstances, but she's just not quite as versatile as the other choices, I think. She's really bad if you're losing. You need to be ahead, and you need to be snowballing hard. Okay, Sona's another one. This is just kind of a respect pick here because she has a really high win rate, and she's the highest scaling, I think, the highest scaling enchanter right now. So if you can get away with getting your Ardent Censer and getting Athene's Unholy Grail, you're just going to be crushing people. Basically, if the fight lasts longer than 5 seconds, you win. Late game team fights, because you just spam that shield. It does so much healing, so much shielding. You have an AoE ultimate that can hold people still. So she's the queen of team fights. If you have a team fight comp, if you have an Amumu Misfortune or something like that on your team, then Sona's going to be amazing. Sorry, a couple of people are trying to call me. I'll call them back in a second. We're almost done here. Then that can be amazing. So she has a place in a specific team fight comp where you're not against like a super hard engaged champ, you know, then she can be pretty good. It's just the problem is a lot of hard engaged champs are powerful right now, right? So Alistar, Thresh, Nautilus, Rakan, like you don't want to see these champs. You could maybe bully out something like a Rakan early, but it is scary to go against these champs. She does have a pretty good matchup against Nami and Lulu, though, if they pick that. She can be serviceable against Fiddlesticks and Zyra if you just survive the lane. Pretty good against Braum, because once again, you know, he just wants to play kind of the defensive, chill, and protect the AD carry, scale up, and that's what she wants to do too. So she's just going to outscale him because she has really high ratios on her W, and she has really good synergy with a lot of the popular items, most notably Athene's and Ardent Sensor. So she can be very, very good in the right circumstances, but you're very squishy, you're very vulnerable to enemy supports, and you're very vulnerable to what people are picking right now. There are a lot of assassins out there. You know, there's a lot of Zed, there's a lot of Talon, LeBlanc, Fizz, almost everything that's really popular in the mid lane is an assassin. There are some exceptions, of course. And then you have, like, basically assassin-like junglers, you know, that just show up and blow you up a lot of the time, right? You've got your Xin Zhao, your Graves, your Lee Sin, all that stuff. So even Gragas, you know, pretty much everything's going to be able to get to you and blow you up. There's just so much mobility, and she just doesn't have... Like, she can speed herself up with her E, but that's not the same as having a dash. Right, Sadie? It's not the same. So, you know, take her at your own peril. Very strong if she lives. But that's a big if. So just keep that in mind. Morgana, you know, Morgana seems like she should be better, and maybe she should be tier 2 right now. Because she is good against these, like, hard engaged champs. The problem is she doesn't engage that well herself. Although I have been interested in looking at maybe like a Glacial Augment build with her, just because Ares not that great. She doesn't have great summoners or great runes right now, ever since the nerf to her pool, and the nerf to Scorch. But maybe Glacial, like if you go Glacial Twin Shadows, the problem is you also need to get Zhonya's Hourglass early typically, because that's just so good with her ult, it's tough to pass up. So one thing with her is you're kind of pulling like the same type of game as Sona and Braum are doing, where you're just going to shield a hyper carry and hope they scale. So you have a Twitch or a Kai'Sa or a Master Yi, and they get ahead and you just throw a huge black shield on them and nobody can stop them and they just kill everybody. Okay. So she's okay. I just think that she's not reliable enough for me. You know, like, you have to hit your Qs, you have to black shield fast enough, which is not a trivial thing. Some of these skill shots come in real quick, like a Rakan or something like that. You know, he ults and he's in there fast. If you don't, like, you know, instantly do it, or like, you know, Alistar engage, or a Thresh hook, like, yeah, it sounds like you should be able to black shield that every time, but there are a lot of players that will miss that black shield. So... I don't know. She's okay. She does push the lane. She doesn't have a lot of mobility. She's very vulnerable to getting ganked and killed. Like, the shield doesn't prevent AD. So if they have a really fed Lucian or a really fed, you know, Talon, Zed, Graves, Zen, all of these types of champs, you don't provide any protection for that. So she's okay. She does have very good matchups into a lot of the popular champs because she stuffs their engages, but a lot of them can kind of work around it. And... I don't know. She just doesn't do it for me right now. I think she's been nerfed a little bit. Her mana regen being nerfed was definitely a thing. I mean, she should have never had 15 mana per 5 in the first place, but once they took it back off of that, then I think that made her even weaker. And I think they, like, nerfed her. They nerfed a few things. I think they may have nerfed the shield and her W. Let me see. I can actually see what they nerfed. Because she was, like, very oppressive earlier on in the season when the tank meta was in. Because shielding champs are always a lot better when the tank meta is popular. Because it gives them more effective health. But, like, against assassins, it's tougher. Especially AD assassins. Yeah, so 815, they reduced the shielding. They increased the mana cost a lot to 80. Okay. Okay, and that's all they've done this season. Pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, she's still okay. Can you still win with her? Sure. It's just I would pick her against if you want to play that side of it against these engaged champions, and just make sure the enemy doesn't have too much AD. The problem though is you're playing their game, right? You're playing reactive. Oops. Well, it has the link. I deleted the G on that, but whatever. I think it still works. You're playing their game, right? You're just reacting to whatever they're doing, and I would much rather be proactive in this meta. I just think there's so much damage. Usually it's just whoever gets the first hit is going to win the fight, right? Whoever starts the engage, that team's going to win the fight most of the time, because there's just people just die, like quick, because everybody's playing high damage. There just aren't any tanks. So there's very, very little margin for error. So, anyways, like you can win with her. She's okay, but not quite what she used to be. And then Janna, Janna still has a respectable win rate. I've tried to play her a couple of times. It feels really bad. She does scale really well with hyper scaling AD carries. So if you have a Kaisa or a Twitch, that can be pretty good. But the decaying shield, the nerf to her movement speed, the nerf to her shield amount, the nerf to her W. I mean, she's been nerfed like a zillion times this season, and maybe I'm just used to playing her when she was more powerful. The nerf to Airy, the nerf to Scorch, the nerf to Celerity, you name it. Like, they've nerfed all of her runes, they've nerfed all of her abilities. She still does have that 52.5% win rate, though. And, she is very good historically against hard engaged champs, if you scale, right? If you get to late game, so they did increase her movement speed a little bit on 819. So that is real. That is a thing. But yeah, the decaying shield is pretty rough. So after 0.75 seconds, you start losing shield value. And then, of course, the stuff they did to her kind of early on in the season was pretty brutal. But, I mean, she scales really hard. She's fast. She can get away from a lot of things. She's very good at disengaging, so, if the Alistar or the Leona goes in and you have your ult, you just ult and heal everybody up. There's definitely a place for her. Maybe I need to explore her a bit more. I'm not going to do it at the end of the season here, but maybe in the preseason I'll try her out again. I mean, it's possible that, she's a little bit better than I think she is. I think once they remove bone plating, that'll help a lot, because that means she won't have to go resolve. And she can go things like more comfortably like inspiration without losing as much opportunity cost. But as of right now, she's okay. We'll see. I know that personally, the last couple of seasons I've had like a 55 to 57% win rate on her. I think last season I had almost 700 games on her. So I played a lot of Janna last season at I think I ended with like 56 or 57%. And this season I played her. She was still probably my 4th or 5th most played champ. I was at like 47%. So it's not like, I don't think it's like I all of a sudden got bad with Janna. Maybe I just didn't adjust to like her new way of life. I was just used to playing her when she was stronger. But, my point is it feels like it's a significant step down from what she used to be. So you can decide if you think that it's worth trying that out. She is one of the better enchanters, I think. But overall, I still think that she's just kind of sneaking in at tier 3, but I guess she could be as high as tier 2, like a pocket pick against certain kinds of champs. Okay, and then finally, this is pretty much going to be it here, but we have Brand. I mentioned Brand with Zyra. Those are kind of interchangeable depending on what you want to play. I prefer Zyra, but they kind of fill the same role. Depends on if you want more uptime with your spells or more consistency with your harassment and vision control. Soraka, I really don't like right now. She's okay, but she's very immobile. She doesn't have any CC hardly. She's got her silence, but she's just a lot better in a tank meta where people are going to have like 200 or 300 armor and she can just sit there and spam heal on them. But right now, people just die, before you can even heal them, and then you're going to get run down and killed too. She's very close range. It's like 450 range on her heal versus Janna's like 800 range on her shield, so she's okay. Shen is another one that was seeing some pro play during Worlds. I don't like him in solo queue as a support. It just requires too much coordination with your ult. Half the time you're going to ult somebody who's low, and then they're just going to run out of the fight even if you ping it. You're very susceptible to getting poked. You don't do as much damage as a lot of the other all-in champs. one of your most powerful abilities, your Spirit Refuge or whatever, the little circle thing that blocks auto attacks, most AD carries are not even going to know what that does, so they're going to run out of that and not even get the benefit from having 100% dodge. So, he's okay. I mean, can he work? Sure. I think the nerf to Banner of Command or like the removal of Banner of Command hurt him a lot. Because he just doesn't really work well with other items. He doesn't work well with Zeke's, a really long cooldown ult. He doesn't need mana. Knight's Vow is pretty good on him, but it's like, what else are you going to get? I guess you can get like Knight's Vow, Locket. But then you're missing out on Zeke, so your AD carry is going to have a lot less damage than the enemy AD carry. Let me see. So, yeah. I mean, some of these are support, some of these are not. I just don't see what he has to offer right now over a lot of these other... He's also not an easy-to-engage champ. Like, yeah, you can flash taunt, but why do that when you can just press Q with Nautilus? Or press R with Nautilus and start a fight? I don't know. He's cool and everything. He does have a dash, so he can get over walls, kind of like Rakan. He can go deep in the jungle and ward, and he, potentially has ways to escape, but I think they're better options. Tahm Kench, great in organized play, really bad in solo queue right now. They've balanced him around pro play, and they've just nerfed him so much. It's rough. They've nerfed his base health, they've nerfed his grayskin, they've nerfed his devour. It's just really tough on Tahm Kench. And he already was tough to play in solo queue. You eat somebody to save them from a situation, they just spit themselves right back out. Say, hey, stupid noob, I had that fight, and then he goes back in and dies, right? It happens way more than it should. Or people accidentally spit themselves out because they don't know what Tahm Kench does. Even in Platinum, they don't know what Tahm Kench does. And so they'll just, they'll be like, oh my god, what happened when you eat them? And they'll just spam all the keys and freak out, and then they spit themselves back out. And your jungler half the time will never use your ult. You're pinging, hey, I've got ult, let's go kill bot lane. And you're trying to get them to come down there. Because that's so easy. Tahm Kench can be good. I would put him as maybe a tier 3 pocket pick if you are duoed with a jungler that is a very aggressive early game jungler. Something like a Lee Sin. If you can duo Lee Sin and Tahm Kench and just abuse that, especially gold and lower, probably even in a plat, and just ult behind them over and over again with Lee, and just keep getting kills, that's very, very abusable. You can do that, that's like money in the bank. If you have a competent jungler that's on board with that. But, that's the thing with Tahm Kench. If you have a high level of coordination, you have a very specific game plan, he's great. He can control side lanes. He basically has a TF ult for 2 that's on 120-second cooldown. He is a free Quicksilver Sash for anyone on your team on a 10-second cooldown. I mean, those are ridiculous abilities. They're so strong. And historically, he's been very powerful with Grayskin, although that has been nerfed. His Tongue Lash is okay poke damage in lane. So, he's a really cool champion. He's one of my favorite design champions. I played a ton of Tahm Kench. Season 6 when I got to Diamond, I think he was my most played champ, or he was certainly close. Yeah, I mean, he's very, very good in theory on paper. Just the problem is the execution is really tough in solo queue, and he's very unforgiving now. He's designed for, the best support players in the world who are doing perfect use of, eating people, saving them with W, and perfect use of his ult, most importantly, to rotate around the map and create a lot of macro pressure. So, I wish that they would balance champions by nerfing the stuff that actually makes them good in pro play rather than nerfing their stats, which affects solo queue. So, increasing the cooldown on Tahm Kench's ult, why not just make his cooldown 140 or 150 seconds and just leave his, leave his Grayskin alone. Don't hit his base health. I don't mind the change to Regurgitate, his W. But it's it's the base stat stuff, right? It's his health, it's his armor, it's his Grayskin. They should let him keep that stuff because that's what makes him, doable in solo queue, where you're not going to be able to use the other team stuff. But instead, they chose to, let him keep the team stuff and just, kill his stats to make him, a super liability in the laning phase. And that, hurts solo queue much more than pro play, so I think they've done a poor job of balancing him this season, but, he had to be nerfed. I just think they did it in the wrong way. But anyways, Kench is on the bench for now. Maybe as a pocket pick. In theory, he's very good against these champions. He's very good against things like Thresh historically, against things like Leona historically. He just completely crushes them. but his stats are so weak. I'm just not sure if it's worth it now. He is very good with Zeke's, because you can just press R. If your jungler's not taking that ultimate, you can just press R, cancel it, it triggers Zeke's, and it goes on a 10-second cooldown. Now, Zeke's has an internal 45-second cooldown, but you can trigger it really easy in a fight, is what I'm trying to say. And then he's good with Knight's Vow, so, he has his moments, but I just think he's been nerfed too much most of the time. Bard is okay. I get asked about Bard a lot. He's fine. He's fun. He's interesting. The problem is, structurally, you have to leave your lane to go roam and grab those meeps, and that can be rough. Your AD carry is probably not going to respect that. They're going to get it engaged on and die. Not always, but more times than, I would feel comfortable with. And it's just really hard to use. You have to hit those stuns. You have to hit your ult. Your ult can actually cause your team to lose the fight. It's one of the only ults in the game where if you screw it up, it can actually kill your team, not just the enemy team. And so I think that makes it pretty risky. So he's okay. Can you win? Sure. He's a good early pressure champ, but if he gets engaged on by these, top tier champs, he's going to be in trouble. He's probably going to die. So I don't think he's amazing in this meta. He's okay. I think he's a couple of buffs away from being really strong. They've been looking at him. They did buff his ult. I think they buffed something else about him earlier, maybe his meeps or something. He's a very interesting champion. I think he's cool. I like him. I just think he's got some problems. Karma, they gave her a buff. She's still got too many problems. They're about to rework her, so we'll see after the rework. But the problem is, it's just she's a push and poke champion. That's just not what's in the meta right now. It's all about that hard engage, that early game kills, things like that. So she's okay. Can you win games? Sure. I just think she's got some problems. Tarek has been nerfed too much. Kind of got the Tom Kench treatment where he was getting abused in the funnel comps in the middle of the season, and they nerfed a lot of his base, type of stuff. They also nerfed, I think they nerfed his health, but they also nerfed his E by 50 damage, so his stun doesn't do very much damage at all, and they increased the cooldown on his ult by 5 billion or something. I haven't even updated his items here. I don't update the items of people that are honorable mentions until they come back up into the tier 3. But he's okay. He is pretty good against all-in champs, but once again, you're kind of at the mercy of your team to coordinate well around your ultimate. And sometimes that can be a lot more difficult than just hey, I hit the hook, let's go fight. So, Zillion's okay. You land those double bombs consistently. You can make an impact. He does, his ult is good against assassins, but his itemization and his runing is just kind of weak right now. And I think, you can cancel out the person who engages on you and they blow you up instantly, but then there's a good chance they're just going to kill you again once you spawn. Not always, but it just depends. So if your team is in a winning situation, if you have someone who's super strong, it's kind of like Morgana. If you have someone that's super strong and you can just put this huge buff on him and just let him go to work, you have a Yi that has 7 kills, and he goes into a fight, kills a few people, and he's about to die, and you ult him, yeah, that's great. But if your team's really far behind, and, you're just ulting somebody who's getting caught in the jungle, they're just going to die again, probably. Or if you get caught by yourself, you're just going to die again. So it's it's great if you have an advantage, but it's a pretty weak mechanic if you're really far behind or if your team is uncoordinated. Vhagar is okay. I get asked about him a lot. Is the ring cool? Yeah, you can blow people up, but he's just too squishy. You can get in there and blow him up. If he gets really far ahead, he can be oppressive with the cage and one-shotting people, but there's an easy fix with Quicksilver Sash for anyone that has a brain that's really tired of getting caged, or they can take cleanse or something like that. He's all about that cage. Some people can just dash or flash out of it. So, I don't know. He's okay, but he's pretty one-dimensional. And then finally, Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz is pretty good against other AP supports. Pretty good against things like Zyra, Brand, Fiddlestick. So you could pick him as a counter pick maybe just because he outranges them. But it's okay. But I wouldn't recommend it most of the time. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Helps other people find it. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.